Member for Castries Southeast.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand here to lend my voice to the discourse on the issues pertaining to this resolution in this honorable House today. The resolution to borrow $202,500,000 EC dollars towards the Huranura Airport redevelopment project. Now, Mr. Speaker, in listening to the discourse from members opposite, you would think that it's doomsday and it's the end of the world. On the one hand, they say they support the project. On the other hand, they said that they had the plans and they had the master plan development for the airport. On another hand, I don't know how many hands they have, Mr. Speaker. On another hand, they are saying that you hold back the project for as long as you can. But this same government, Mr. Speaker, or these same opposition members, today, they are telling us that if they were there, the airport would have been finished. But the member for Labrie himself said, in the quotations that he was reading from leading persons, he said, who are airport experts, that the advice is you hold on to the facility you have there for as long as you can. In other words, until it falls apart, don't do anything with it. Mr. Speaker, we used to go to the airport. You used to see buckets and tins all over the place collecting water from the leaks at the airport. It was an embarrassing place for you to go to see that you are receiving visitors. When St. Lucia has been ranked so many times as the #1 honeymoon destination in the world. And that's the facility. That's the entry point we have to receive people. So you have to wonder, do members opposite really mean what they are saying? Because as I listen to the member for Labrie, who I think may be the most experienced person as it relates to airports, having worked at the airport himself, you would think, Mr. Speaker, that he would have a greater appreciation. Then you have the leader of the opposition, who was the Minister for Ports in the last Labour administration, with direct responsibility for the airport. And they come here and they tell you, oh, all you're going to say is, we were there, we didn't do it. So what am I supposed to say? You did it? If I go there, do I see a new Huranura International Airport Terminal? So what am I expected to say, Mr. Speaker, when I stand in this honorable House? I have to say that you did not do it, and the reason why you did not do it is because you could not do it. You heard them speak about projects. They spoke about the Choiseul School. And what did they say? We had put in the tenders. The contract was to be awarded. You sat on it for a year. You didn't do it. But the school has opened under a United Workers' Party government. So we didn't start it, but we finished it. So without starting the school, it is finished. So it must have dropped from heaven and find itself here. Or somebody said, let it be, and it was. Because you see, Mr. Speaker, if we are going to come to this honorable House and have an intelligent debate about the facts, you failed. You failed. It's not my fault that you failed. I stood up in this honorable House and I said to them, you don't agree with the process that UWP was following? You are the government of the day. You can discard everything that we were doing. And Hansard will show that these are my statements. And I said to them, do not stop the airport development tax. Do not do it. You may not have liked our method, but we are collecting the revenue. What did the member for Beaufort South say? Ably supported by the present leader of the Labour Party, the member for Castries East. What did they say? You all have not put a block in the ground. You all are collecting money. We are going to stop it. And I'm not supposed to say that in the House, Mr. Speaker. When at the same time, they came to the Honorable House and put a levy on people all around St. Lucia for water, for desilting the Roseau Dam, when they did not even have a plan. And after 5 years, they could not desilt the dam. So, Mr. Speaker, am I to take the members opposite serious when they speak in this House? Am I to say that what they are saying has some substance and it is worth listening to? I mean, we have to be real about what we are attempting to tell the people of St. Lucia. And when you cannot do it, keep quiet. Admit that you could not do it. You have a right to question. But I want to ask the members opposite. Didn't SLASPA invite the opposition to a meeting to discuss the Huronora Airport redevelopment project since they are in opposition? And Mr. Speaker, through you, if any member opposite want to answer, I will give them the opportunity to answer. Didn't SLASPA invite the opposition to a meeting to tell them what the redevelopment plan for the airport was? Did they show up? Did any one of them show up? But they will come to this Honorable House and they will pretend that they are innocent, Mr. Speaker, that they didn't know anything and nobody engaged them to give them any information. Here's the difference between the two parties. When we were in opposition, the project had, the conceptual designs and everything had started under our watch. When we came in, we were invited to a meeting at SLASPA. The then leader of the United Workers' Party, the present Prime Minister, and myself went to represent the opposition to hear what the plans for the airport was. Can the members opposite say the same today? When they were invited, did they go? So if information is made available to you, you do not go and get hold of the information, but you want to come in the House and pretend as if this government is doing things that you don't know about. I'm supposed to take you serious? Mr. Speaker, it was an experience at that meeting. Because at that meeting, representing SLASPA as counsel was the former Speaker of the House who was Speaker at the time. Wow. As counsel for SLASPA. So here we are. Leader of the United Workers' Party, Member of Parliament for Castries South East, going to a meeting with the IFC for an explanation. And who is there to guide the meeting? The Speaker, not our Speaker. Under the Labour Party administration. The Speaker under the Labour Party administration. Where the leader of the, and when I stood up to when I was making my contribution, for some reason he must have thought he was still in the House. And he wanted to interrupt me. Okay. And the leader of the United Workers' Party had to remind him, this is not Parliament. This is not the House. We are here to discuss. So, Mr. Speaker, the Labour Party must stop this scaremongering when it comes to things. When you are in government, you do your projects the way that you think is the best to do it. That is why the people elect you. Why can't you accept that this UWP government is governing in a manner that the people accept? You know, Mr. Speaker, what persons, members opposite must understand. We all have 5 years when we are elected. And if the people are not satisfied with us after 5 years, they will make their decision like they made with you. Don't come and pretend that you want us to do so well when we know you are hoping and praying that this government fails so that you get a chance to come back at the helm of governance in this country.
Never.
So, we look at what has happened. We've heard a lot of discussion. The member for Labrie said that if we had gone with the plan, the airport would have been finished. It would have been completed. But they are telling the Prime Minister, you cannot have your cake and eat it. But they want to have their cake and they want to eat it also. Mr. Speaker, I move on. Because I don't believe there was really an intention by the members opposite to build the airport or to even finish the airport. They had time. If they even wanted to start the airport, they had another 6 months before they could call elections. But you see, Mr. Speaker, it is instructive what you hear in this honorable house. So they believe, and I would love the member for Castries East to make it a document of the House, the list of projects that he was talking about. Because, Mr. Speaker, when you're doing so many things in government, you don't even remember all the projects that you are working on. Because you see, you don't have election in your mind. You have the development of St. Lucia as the focus point that you want to concentrate on. But as they said, even if we start the airport, we will not finish it for elections. Because all the projects have been geared towards elections. The projects on this side are geared towards the development of St. Lucia. Not about whether we can finish the airport before elections and we go and have grand opening. That's what they did with OKEU, you know, Mr. Speaker. You remember? OKEU finished. So you have a batem by OKEU. You baptize. Ek you bayano. Ek you febe. Ek you viali. You know, Mr. Speaker, you don't govern in this way. That's not how you go about governing a country. You have to look after the interest of the people. How could you build a hospital? Spend over $100,000 for naming ceremony. You know, I remember, that caused me to remember the late Sir John when he said, United Workers' Party not taking part in Batem Popo. You know, it's children when they play in games and they have a doll and they want to name the doll, they have a naming, they have a little ceremony. You have a Batem Popo. That is how the Labour Party operates. You have a Batem Popo. By OKEU, ek yo feme OKEU, ek yo ali, ek hodia yo ka di flambeau. Of course, look at the services that is provided at OKEU today. Up to Saturday night, I was at OKEU, and I was quite pleased to see the services that are already being offered under this government at the OKEU hospital. That is the difference, Mr. Speaker. Some people can talk, some people can work. And this is the government of workers. And the evidence is there. You know, Mr. Speaker, the Labour Party campaigned in 2011 on a platform of jobs, jobs, jobs. And I heard the member for Labrie. I took notes, because I pay very careful attention when he speaks. When he is flying, whether it's at low altitude or at high altitude, I pay attention. And he spoke about where are the jobs, and he was trying to dispute the job numbers. Mr. Speaker, how can you dispute the indisputable? The fact of the matter is unemployment went up on the labor and unemployment is going down on the United Workers' Party. And you can count it by whatever percentage you want. It is going down. And you know, they try to play games as usual. So they tell you there are less job seekers in the market. So who said when you were there were not less job seekers in the market? Because there's a formula, there is an international formula being used to tabulate employment and unemployment. This is not an invention by the United Workers' Party. And we all know the formula is simple. Of course, if during a time period that people are so frustrated that they cannot get jobs, and they stop looking for work, then they are no longer considered part of the workforce. But that is not the case in St. Lucia. People have more confidence today, and when people have confidence, more people leave their homes and they go out searching for jobs. And the stats from the statistics department will show you whether jobs have been created since the United Workers' Party came into office. Let me use a simple number. The report, the statement by the Minister of Agriculture. Let's use very simple ones. No complications. How many more acres of land is being cultivated for banana production in St. Lucia? How many more farmers? And if each of these farmers employs one person to work with them, how many jobs have we created as a result? Mr. Speaker, the evidence is there. If I was opposite, I would be worried. You know why I would be worried? Because the numbers are looking too good on this side. I would not have a chance if I was in opposition. So that's what they're afraid of. That is why they will come and try to scare the people and make you believe. Imagine a bank giving a government a loan at a good interest rate, and the member for Beaufort South is concerned that we have negotiating skills, and the member for Castries East, oh, these are the best negotiators. That's why they say they can get it at that low rate. It's not my fault that the country didn't have confidence in you. It's the fault of your performance that caused them not to have confidence in you. That is what this is about. You see, when a batsman goes to the wicket and he has confidence, his likelihood of performing at the highest level is always better than when he's tentative and he's not sure whether he should play forward or backward. Usually he's stuck one place and he gets out from LBW. Okay, so Mr. Speaker, looking at the issue, the member for Labrie, again, raised the issue of the police force and the issues of security. And he said, while we are doing all of this borrowing, where is the money that we are spending on the police? Mr. Speaker, the member for Labrie apparently is still in flight mode. Apparently he has not landed. Because it's only somebody who is still in space would not understand that this government has done 10 times more for the police force than the Labour Party. From repairs to police stations, upgrades. Well, apparently he's not living in St. Lucia. He's stuck in the Republic. You know, Mr. Speaker, we have to highlight it. When we came in, none of the police boats were not working. The forensic lab was closed. Mr. Speaker, when they accused me of signing how many direct awards, ask them how many of the direct awards were for new vehicles for the police force. You know, Mr. Speaker, we are not where we need to be yet. But when you hear certain things, you need to respond. We are not gloating over, we have arrived and we have accomplished. We promised a new St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, I heard the member say because of 2 years left, or election is around the corner, must be he calling the death. 2 years to go. All the things that we are announcing, we had spoken about in our manifesto. I want that copy of the list of projects you have, Honorable Member for Castries East, because you did a very good promotion for us of where this government is going. And I know that's why the member is concerned. Mr. Speaker, through you, if I can get a list of these projects, I would appreciate it. Mr. Speaker, we are looking at the airport redevelopment project. We are looking at the formula of the St. Lucia Labour Party, and we need to be mindful. When you go to a financial institution, they evaluate you and they make a determination as to whether you qualify for a loan or not. And all of us who have gone to the bank wants to know everything about you. So you don't think the banks carried out a full investigation on the performance of this government and this economy before they agreed to give the government of St. Lucia a loan? You don't think that the bank did its due diligence? I've not even come to the issue, Mr. Speaker. The issue in relation to the performance of the bank and the losses that was sustained during the reign of the St. Lucia Labour Party as opposed to the profits that this same bank has made since the United Workers' Party came into government. We have not gone down that road yet. I don't know if time will permit me, but if it does, I will. So, the police force, and I applaud our policemen for being sensible, for putting the interest of St. Lucia above their own personal interest, in coming to the point to be the first organization in the service to have accepted the proposal of negotiations by the government of St. Lucia. There's the difference, because, Mr. Speaker, they have criticized us about that, but I want to remind them. The members opposite were the ones who proposed to cut the salaries of public servants by 5%. Today, on the United Workers' Party, is not 0.00 we give it. We're giving a 5%, 1% retroactive, and 4% for the coming triennial. Mr. Speaker, so when the member for Labrie will try to say we are borrowing, but we are not taking care of the other critical issues, we are taking care of all of the issues, but you cannot solve all of the problems overnight because the Labour Party left a mess when they lost the elections. Mr. Speaker, they spoke about where we are spending. They were spending $1 million on school repairs. So for the 5 years, they would have spent $5 million. And the member for Castries East was the minister responsible because they had moved the school repairs from education to infrastructure. Look, he's there, Mr. Speaker. Ask him how much money they were spending on school repairs in St. Lucia. Since the United Workers' Party came into government, in 3 years we've spent more than $15 million on the school plant in St. Lucia. Now, Mr. Speaker, that is not the building of the Choiseul School. That's not included in that. That is not the completion of the Dennery Infant School or any of the new facilities, you know. We are talking about basic maintenance and repair of the school plant throughout the length and breadth of St. Lucia. So, Mr. Speaker, the approach of development under a United Workers' Party government is a balanced approach that touches every area of development in this country. Mr. Speaker, The member said we are borrowing for or our borrowing is not even for marginal projects for development. Is the member saying that the airport redevelopment is not even a marginal project for redevelopment, when tourism is the greatest contributor? And not just tourism, you know. We are talking about stay-over arrivals. And the stay-over arrivals, 95% of them come from Huronora International Airport. How come a member of parliament said that the redevelopment of Huronora International Airport is not even marginal in relation to the development of St. Lucia? But in the same breath, they are saying we're not opposed to the project, just hold back for as long as you can. So tell the people you build in the airport, but you're not really building the airport. You're holding back. You're holding back. And all of the airports that, now look at the two countries that they chose to highlight. St. Vincent, that is next door. I didn't hear them say anything about St. Vincent and its international airport. But they cite Barbados and Jamaica. Why did they cite Barbados and Jamaica? Jamaica had no other choice for the airport redevelopment project because they were under a fiscal adjustment program by the World Bank and the IMF. Barbados, debt to GDP, where is it at? And I know I can preempt them. They will say that's where we take in St. Lucia. But I will show you that you are wrong. Even in your thinking, you are wrong. Far less for your words. Where is St. Lucia in relation to these countries? So if Barbados could have done otherwise, they would have done otherwise. If Jamaica could have done otherwise, they would have done otherwise. And we are going to investigate the IFC proposal besides the direction that this government is going. So, Mr. Speaker, the project of the airport redevelopment is not just a marginal project. It is a critical project to take St. Lucia to the next level of development that is required. There is no getting away from that. Now, on the one hand, they tell you yes, but on the other hand, they don't believe that. Mr. Speaker, the financial logic and good management is not on the opposite side here. And I heard the member, he said, oh, they'll come and tell you it's as simple as that. So if it's not simple as that, what is it? Let me give you a lesson in simple ways that banks deal with things. And I've taken enough loans in my life to understand how this works. And you can go and check my records at every bank. I've never defaulted on a payment. And that was long before I came into politics. And I've always been self-employed, Mr. Speaker. I didn't have to have somebody pay my salary. I learned to pay my salary and to pay my loans. And so I want to tell them, they like to call me bus driver. But I have no problems with that because we made an honest dollar. But I will give them an example. When a bus owner goes to a bank and he takes a loan of $150,000 to buy a bus to put on a route, the bank assesses his situation and he is given between 5 to 7 years for repayment of that loan. And on what basis is he given? Today, if he does not have a route permit, the bank will not give him the loan. Why? Does he have the money to buy the vehicle cash? No. Is he guaranteed that he's going to get passengers on the road every day? No. But the bank assesses its risk Look at the trends and the patterns. And I just had a discussion with the bank recently in trying to help out a constituent. And you know what the bank told me? Based on the route is the level of risk. So if you apply in the Castries to Grosile route, then your chances of getting the loan is better because this route is a more lucrative route than other routes that have less people traversing on a daily basis. What is the lesson here? So the bank can assess how many passengers that this bus is going to transport for the next 5 to 7 years, no matter what happens, and give that person a loan on the basis that passengers will continue to travel. Everybody in St. Lucia will not buy a car. There will be enough passengers so that this person can meet the monthly obligations to themselves and to the bank. Now, how does that apply to the airport? So, data in this country will show for the last 40 years, the tourism arrivals, the trends in the market, you have data for more than 30 years. You mean to tell me that as a country, as a financial institution, as SLASPA, nobody can make a fair assessment and a projection to say today we have had 400,000 passengers a year and a projected growth of 1% per year, to make a fair assessment that you will continue to have this number of passengers coming to St. Lucia. The other thing they tell us, Mr. Speaker, is if there is a hurricane, in the provisions of the loan, and we have done it for the farmers after Hurricane Thomas, the government spoke to the financial institutions for a suspension of the time period for repayment. So, Mr. Speaker, how did we negotiate? We negotiated that if there is an unforeseen circumstance that develops and we cannot pay for a period of time, that you are given this grace period to make up. Further to that, Mr. Speaker, the $45 airport development charge has a 20% cover. In other words, it covers the loan by an additional 20%. So when you pay what you are required to pay on a yearly basis, you save 20%. So in 5 years, you would have the payment for a whole year accumulated. Now, Mr. Speaker, I don't expect the members opposite to understand that. I don't expect them to understand that because their formula, now look at the formula, Mr. Speaker. And whether they say to say it or not, I will say it, Mr. Speaker. 400,000 passengers at $35 per passenger for 1 year, $14 million. For 30 years, which is the concession arrangement that they were going into, would be $420 million. Now remember, the airport is costing $170 million. So, now their formula, Mr. Speaker, was not $35. When we went to the IFC meeting, the formula was $55, and the IFC said that the people are not willing to take this thing at $55, so they have to consider between 60 and 65. So I used the middle figure of the $60, and 400,000 passengers at $60 would amount to $24 million a year. And if you multiply that by 30 years, you'd get $720 million. And Mr. Speaker, as long as there is that issue, I will say this. You are telling me for a loan of 170 million to build an airport, that I should give it to a foreign entity. The same people, Mr. Speaker, who label this government as pro-foreigners against locals, wants to take the airport redevelopment from SLASPA and give it to a foreign entity to build and to be guaranteed a minimum amount of revenue for the 30 years duration of the project of 720 million. And that is if everything remains flat as it is and there is no growth in the airport or the arrival of passengers in this country. And you want to challenge the United Workers' Party on the basis of our financial model? And you want to tell me that your financial model was better than what we are proposing? Mr. Speaker, what they have not told us in their agreement, the present $25 that goes to SLASPA, what would happen to that $25? So SLASPA would become an entity of the concessionaire, and it's based on the concessionaire's profit that SLASPA would get a little return. Now the question is, SLASPA is one entity. It runs the port at Rodney Bay Marina, Marigo. It runs the port at Viewfort. It runs the port in Castries, and it also runs the Huronora International Airport and the George Charles Airport. A combination of all of these entities together make up the revenue stream of SLASPA. When you take off HIA from SLASPA, and if you recall when we debated the first bill, Mr. Speaker, when we debated the first bill, the member for Viewfort South said he knows that the people at SLASPA are rejoicing on the basis of the decision made by this government, because SLASPA understood what was happening. That when this concessionaire came in, SLASPA would now have to be an employee of the concessionaire. Because SLASPA on its own, we found the operations of HIA Airport may not have made enough to be able to run George Charles Airport. And I gathered it from the member for Labrie again. Indirectly, they were telling us the plan is to close the George Charles Airport, because his whole argument was to create a hub. You need all the flights going in one direction. And I'm not surprised at that, Mr. Speaker. You know why? Because while we were in opposition, two members of the Labour Party were commissioned to carry out a study on the airport, on George Charles Airport, to make a determination as to whether it should remain or whether it should go. So, Mr. Speaker, the Labour Party must come out clearly. The members opposite must come out clearly and tell the people of St. Lucia what their hidden agenda has been as far as the port services and the airport is concerned. Because there's a lot they have not told us. But they talk about transparency and accountability. So if SLASPA would become a subsidiary of that entity, because where would you think Port Castries alone could make enough money to keep the present structure of SLASPA? You think between Port Castries and George Charles Airport, if you remove all the benefits that is derived from HIA, and we know how these international entities work, Mr. Speaker. They know how to tell you they don't make profits. They know how to tell you, and it's only on the profit that they would be sharing. So, Mr. Speaker, the evidence is there that the approach being taken by the opposition was flawed. No prudent financial manager would go in this direction. You know, Mr. Speaker, So the IFC wanted in the region of $60 per head for the building of the airport. Today, Mr. Speaker, we are building the same airport, and we are able to pay, and both the Exim Bank and the local banks that is part of the syndicate understands that the $45 is more than adequate to pay both loans and to cover St. Lucia adequately. Now I need to say something here, Mr. Speaker. Is it going to impact debt to GDP? Of course it will. But this is a decision that every man has to make in his life. Will you ever take a loan to build a house because you'll be owing $100,000 or $200,000 or $250,000, but your salary is only $6,000? Do we ever do that? Why do we do it? Because you are building an asset base and you are building something that has value for the future. So at all points in our lives, we would get to a point where our debt is higher than what we are making on a monthly basis. But you see, the member for ancillary countries was making the point. The IFC, the World Bank, the IMF, all of them, they look at the immediate debt to GDP ratio and how it is impacted. Who factors in the new revenue stream that is created? Because, Mr. Speaker, what they did not tell you when they cited Jamaica and Barbados is that while all of these countries were charging close to $100 per passenger, St. Lucia was charging $25. So we had the leverage to increase our taxes to $98, a difference of $73. And I heard the member for Castries South, and he said that the Prime Minister said all the ports that we are building, that the airport development tax would be to pay for the port. You see, Mr. Speaker, statements are made and members opposite choose to use the selective part of the statement without reviewing the whole statement. So what was said by the government is that if Carnival comes through with the port development and that they bring in additional passengers, not the present number of passengers that are there, but the additional passengers that they would bring in, that part of that, not the $35, but the $28 from that would use to offset some of the cost for the port. Nothing interferes with the $35 that is there. And that is not even needed because with our present numbers, and that is why we know, Mr. Speaker, based on the plans of this government, that by the time we roll out the projects that we are doing, that if we have 20 years to repay that loan, we should be able to pay that loan in less than 20 years, maybe 15 years for that matter, on the basis of where we are going. So, Mr. Speaker, I see the member for Viewfort South is not here, but I want to remind the member for Labrie that what you could not do in 5 years in bringing down the unemployment numbers, they have gone down significantly under a United Workers' Party in 3 years. And that's a fact. Nobody, you can spin it, you can say what you want, but the facts speak for themselves. And Mr. Speaker, I heard the members opposite speak about what we cannot do in 3 years. Well, Mr. Speaker, they had 3 terms. You see, they're pretending today as if they have always been in opposition. They had 3 terms in government. Ask them to measure the track record of 15 years besides the track record of the United Workers' Party for the last 3 years. And not even going to the previous term. The last 3 years. Because, Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia is on the path to growth and development under this United Workers' Party government. They said we were not creating sustainable jobs. But all of a sudden, I got a little feeling today that the discussion about Ojo Labs is changing. Because all of a sudden, they're saying the only thing that the government has done in terms of investment is Ojo Labs. So there must be some conversion on the other side there. Because people from their constituencies are being employed at Ojo Labs. Now, the difference between sustainable jobs and unsustainable jobs is what we are doing. We have not spent more money than them, Mr. Speaker, but we have spent the money better than they did. That is the difference. Because under their nice program, people were being employed in private businesses, and as soon as the government ended the program, the jobs ended. On the Ojo Labs, the people that the government is subsidizing, you see, under their watch, Mr. Speaker, the government was paying the full salary. Under the present UWP administration, the government is only paying a percentage of the salary, and then the company is paying the other percentage.
Honourable member, please be reminded you have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will finish. So, Mr. Speaker, I am happy that they are able to acknowledge today that Ojo Labs is actually making a difference in the lives of young people in the south of the island. And there are also young people from Castries. They said they have not seen anything. I guess they don't pass by DSH. They said they saw 2 donkeys there. At least they have something there. What was there when they were there? The cows disappeared when they were there, Mr. Speaker. So at least if they have donkeys now, the horses will come eventually. Because it's donkeys and horses that go together. So if you saw donkeys, honorable member, rest assured the horses are coming. They are part of the same family. You see, Mr. Speaker, you can only see what you want to see. It is not just with your eyes that you see. You have to see with your mind. And that's the inability that they have on this side, Mr. Speaker. Because when you evaluate, you mean all the trucks that have been employed in Viewfort, all of the work that has gone on the horse racing track, there's no indication of a capital project happening. And I can say to them, government has not spent a cent on the DSH project that is happening there. And I want them to come and show. They say the road that we made there is for DSH. So I want to see if it's horses that will pass on the road or if it's cars that will drive. Because I don't know DSH is bringing cars. I know they bring in horses. But they said the road is for DSH. We will see as time goes on, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move on to a couple of other issues. I've spoken about Jamaica and Barbados. Mr. Speaker, they don't understand years of cumulative growth. Now I want to ask the members opposite through you one question, Mr. Speaker. Just one question. Explain negative growth to me. Because that's a term that is frequently used. Explain negative growth to me. Because we come and we say the economy had negative growth. You don't understand cumulative growth, but you understand negative growth. So you will have to explain to me what is negative growth. Because, Mr. Speaker, when we speak about cumulative growth, it's just to help members who have a lesser understanding of economics, what we are saying. Because if you grew the economy by 3% this year, and next year you grow the economy by 1.5%, that does not erase the 3% growth that you had there. And I told them we didn't even use the compound method. Because if you use the compound method, it would be more. We use just the straight method of addition to just make a simple point that under United Workers' Party government, we've had 3 years of consecutive growth, while under Labour Party government, we had 4 years, 3 years of negative growth, 1 year of zero. And the zero was negative if I use the cumulative way of calculating. Yes, because the zero is on the lower number of the decline that was there. So if they found $100, Mr. Speaker, if they found the economy was generating $100, in year 1 it went down to 90. In year 2 it went down to 85. And in year 3 it went down to 80. The year that was zero was calculated, the zero was calculated on the 80, not on the 100 that they found. You see, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about growth, there's real growth, and the real growth has only happened under a United Workers' Party government. So when we grew 1.5%, the 1.5% was on top of the first 3.6 and the other 3.5. And then the 1.5 was on top of that because they were using the last figure. They didn't go to the best figure when we came in 2016. But this, Mr. Speaker, they can't understand that. They cannot understand that. Mr. Speaker, the bank today, Mr. Speaker, I bought some shares in the bank, in Bank of St. Lucia, many years ago, not when I came into politics, before I came into politics. And I've declared to Integrity Commission, so it's on the Integrity Commission list. I've always done that. My shares in the bank. So Mr. Speaker, when the members will try and make people believe that things are so bad and the bank is taking a risk. Mr. Speaker, during the reign of the Labour Party, the value of my shares went down. The value of the shares are only going up since the United Workers' Party came into government and the bank has returned to a profitable operation. And let me tell you, government was not responsible for the poor performance of the bank. Government has never defaulted on a payment. Whether the Labour Party government or the United Workers' Party government, no government in this country has defaulted on a payment. So the challenges that we were faced with was not because of government. So you are telling me, go and borrow all this money from outside institutions. Let them make all the interest. Let them make all the benefits. And our institutions do not allow them to float. They are making an investment in a good area. There is a guaranteed source of revenue in place to guarantee the repayment of the loan. And a government guarantee. You know, Mr. Speaker, this is not a direct government guarantee. This is for SLASPA. SLASPA has had a good record of performance in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, for a member from Viewfort South to come and paint some picture as if we are on the brink of the precipice, he should know the precipice because he led St. Lucia on top of the precipice. We have moved a few steps away from the precipice. And by the next term in government, we will be away from, there will be no precipice in sight. Because only this, the members opposite know how to take this country to a precipice. And the track record is there to show that from the days of the late Sir John to now, St. Lucia has always done better in terms of development under United Workers' Party. That's a fact, Mr. Speaker. And so, they spoke about the VAT. Can you believe? I'll close on this point. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask them, the hotel development that they boast about, did it pay VAT? And if the hotel could have been given VAT exemption. Why is the member for Castries East preempting the next bill to say, oh, you're going to give VAT? So the material that built the hotel didn't come from overseas. But the material that built in the airport, the bulk of it is coming from overseas. Mr. Speaker, that is how, I don't want to use a wrong word for you to tell me, take it back. Mr. Speaker, this is how the members opposite try to mislead the people when they themselves have done worse in government. I reserve the words that I would use. But Mr. Speaker, VAT exemption is not something new. It is like taking money from the right hand and putting it in the left hand.
Honourable Member, you have 5 minutes, Mr. Khan.
I will round off in 5 minutes. Mr. Speaker, I must say this. If the government adds the 15% VAT to the project, you now have to go to the bank, borrow an additional 10% of 170 would be 17 and 9, 8.5. 17 and 8, 25. You'd have to borrow an extra $25.5 million to cover the VAT on the project. And if you, so think of that and think of the interest that you are going to pay to the project. And just to take the money from the right hand of government to put it in the left hand, and it is costing you that much. Can you believe that this is the economics followed by the members opposite? So they know how to give the hotels the VAT exemption because of what it is costing them. But they want to challenge the issue of VAT exemption on a government project of that magnitude. And I'm supposed to take the leader of the opposition serious? I'm supposed to think that this is an individual who wants to be the future prime minister of this country? Is that how he's going to lead the country? But I know why they go down that road, Mr. Speaker. Because I tell them I've been around for a few days. And because I've been around for a few days, I know things. So when CCI was building the projects in St. Lucia, you know what was happening? CCI was contracted to pay the salaries of the staff of PCU. And CCI would pay the staff of PCU, that's the project coordinating unit, under the Ministry of Infrastructure, at the time Ministry of Communications and Works. And 1 week later, would go back and collect the money from the government with a 10% commission on top of it. And I want any member opposite who was in the government to challenge me on this and to say that is not true. So I well understand why they want to go down that road. That's not the only place. Slasper can tell them. When La Place Carénage was built, they formed a company to be a debt collector for rent for Slasper. And you know what was happening? That debt company was getting 15% commission. And the 15% commission was even on the electricity bill. So if Lucilec gave them a bill for $100, Slasper had to pay $115 for the electricity bill because the debt had to go through the debt collector. And the records are there to show that. But that is how the members opposite operates. And when this government, who are fiscal managers, who are prudent managers of the economy, come up with a program that is going to benefit St. Lucia and benefit the people of St. Lucia, I don't expect them to understand that, because the method of operation, they talk about foreigners, they know why they like the foreigners. If they love St. Lucia so much and they don't want the foreigners, why you want to get rid of Slasper to give a foreign entity the concession for the airport for 30 years? If you are to say to a syndicate of St. Lucians, form a company, and we're giving you the airport for 30 years with that revenue stream, they can do it. So, Mr. Speaker, in closing, I lend my full support to this motion because the redevelopment of HIA is paramount to taking St. Lucia to the next level. And the financial model proposed by this government is far superior to anything that the Labour Party could have dreamed of when they were in office. And even now, Mr. Speaker, by the level of their debate, it is clear that they are clueless about how to make a project viable. I have every confidence that the team on this side will deliver. And Mr. Speaker, they want to tie me to the project. They want to find a way to tie me to it. But I have every confidence in the Minister for Port Services and the Prime Minister, who are quite capable of handling this project in a manner that when the time comes, they said they put the committee will have nothing to do, because this project will be delivered to the people of St. Lucia in the manner that this government has presented to this honorable house. I thank you.